The year is 1914, a year that will forever alter the course of history. Europe stands on the precipice, a continent teetering on the edge of an abyss. A continent, prosperous and proud, is about to be consumed by a storm of its own making. The streets are filled with life, unaware of the impending chaos. The drums of war beat, their rhythm growing ever more insistent, a terrifying symphony of impending destruction. The parades, once symbols of national pride, now foreshadow the horrors to come. The world watches in disbelief as the fragile peace crumbles. Headlines scream of conflict and families gather, their faces etched with worry and fear. Alliances forged in fear and ambition now bind nations to a dreadful destiny. Treaties meant to secure peace now act as chains pulling countries into the abyss. The guns of August are about to roar, and their echo will reverberate for generations to come. The preparations are meticulous, the anticipation palpable. From the bustling cities to the quiet countryside, a shadow falls. The transformation is swift and unrelenting, as communities brace for the unknown. Millions of young men, their faces etched with a mixture of excitement and apprehension, will march off to war. They leave behind families, friends, and the lives they once knew. Few of them will return the same. The scars of battle, both seen and unseen, will forever mark their souls. Europe in the early 20th century, a tapestry of ancient empires and emerging powers. National pride burns bright, fueled by industrial might and colonial ambition. The great powers, like players in a deadly game, maneuver for dominance. Germany, newly unified and hungry for recognition, clashes with the established order. Britain, mistress of the seas, watches warily as Germany's naval ambitions grow. France, still smarting from its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, yearns for revenge. In the Balkans, a tinderbox of ethnic and religious tensions simmers. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, a patchwork of nationalities, struggles to maintain its grip. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, will provide the spark. Sarajevo, June 28, 1914. A bright summer day turns to tragedy. Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie are gunned down in their open car. The assassin Gavrilo Princip, a young Serbian nationalist, fires the fatal shots. The world is shocked. The assassination of an heir to the throne is an unprecedented act. Austria-Hungary, backed by Germany, issues an ultimatum to Serbia, demanding satisfaction. Serbia, supported by Russia, hesitates. The clock is ticking. Diplomacy falters. The intricate web of alliances designed to prevent war now acts as a deadly chain reaction. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. Within days, Europe is at war. Germany, fearing a two-front war, unleashes its Schlieffen Plan. German troops pour into neutral Belgium, violating its neutrality. Britain, outraged, declares war on Germany. The lamps are going out all over Europe. France mobilizes its armies to meet the German onslaught. Russia, mobilizing slowly but surely, threatens Germany's eastern border. The Ottoman Empire joins the Central Powers, adding its might to the conflict. The world watches in horror as Europe descends into chaos. What began as a localized conflict has exploded into a global conflagration. The Great War has begun. Trenches of despair. On the Western Front, a brutal stalemate sets in, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The landscape is scarred by the relentless conflict. From the English Channel to the Swiss border, a vast network of trenches snakes across the ravaged landscape. These trenches, dug by soldiers under constant threat, become their homes and their graves. Millions of men face each other across a no-man's land of barbed wire and mud. This desolate expanse is littered with the remnants of failed assaults and the bodies of the fallen. Machine guns, artillery, and poison gas become the tools of a new kind of warfare. The once noble image of battle is replaced by the grim reality of industrialized slaughter. Attacks are met with withering fire, cutting down waves of advancing soldiers. The bravery of these men is overshadowed by the sheer futility of their efforts. Gains are measured in yards, casualties in the thousands. Each inch of ground is paid for with blood, and the cost is staggering. The trenches become a muddy, bloody hell on earth. Soldiers live in constant fear, surrounded by the sights and sounds of death. Life in the trenches is a nightmare. The men endure freezing winters, scorching summers, and the ever-present threat of enemy attack. Soldiers endure constant shelling, sniper fire, and the ever-present threat of disease. Trench foot, dysentery, and other illnesses claim nearly as many lives as the enemy. Rats, lice, and the stench of death are their constant companions. The trenches are infested with vermin, and the dead are often left where they fall. Yet, amidst the horror, acts of courage and compassion shine through. Soldiers share their rations, tend to the wounded, and find moments of humanity in the midst of the madness. America joins the fray. For 3 years the United States remains neutral, watching the carnage in Europe with growing concern. However, events will soon conspire to draw America into the maelstrom. The sinking of the Lusitania by a German U-boat in 1915, with the loss of American lives, inflames American public opinion. Germany's resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare, and the discovery of the Zimmermann telegram, in which Germany proposes an alliance with Mexico, push America over the edge. On April 6, 1917, the United States declares war on Germany. America, the arsenal of democracy, will mobilize its vast resources and manpower to tip the scales in favor of the Allies. Turning the tide. The arrival of American troops in Europe in 1917 provides a much-needed morale boost to the war-weary Allies. Fresh, enthusiastic, and well-equipped, the doughboys are eager to prove their mettle. American troops play a decisive role in key battles like Belleau Wood, Chateau Thierry, and the Meuse-Argonne offensive. Their fighting spirit and determination help to break the back of the German army. The tide of the war is turning. Germany, exhausted and facing defeat on multiple fronts, is forced to sue for peace. The guns fall silent on November 11, 1918. At 11 a.m., the armistice is signed. The world rejoices at the end of the war, but the cost of victory is staggering. Millions lie dead, victims of a conflict that seemed to have no end. Empires crumble, and the map of Europe is redrawn. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ends the war but leaves a bitter legacy. Germany, blamed for the war, is forced to accept harsh reparations and territorial concessions. The seeds of resentment are sown. The world emerges from the war forever changed. The old order is gone, replaced by a new world order struggling to find its footing. The war's impact will be felt for decades to come. The Great War, a conflict that was supposed to end all wars, proved to be anything but. It was a cataclysmic event that engulfed nations and reshaped the world in ways that were unimaginable before its onset. It was a war that shattered illusions and left an indelible mark on the human psyche. The landscapes were scarred, and the hearts of those who lived through it were forever changed. We remember the millions who fought and died in the trenches, enduring unimaginable hardships and showing extraordinary resilience. The countless acts of courage and sacrifice where ordinary men became heroes are etched in our collective memory. We remember the nurses who tended to the wounded, often working under dire conditions, providing care and comfort amidst the chaos. The families who lost loved ones, their grief and sorrow a testament to the war's far-reaching impact, are not forgotten. And the nations forever scarred by the conflict, their landscapes and societies altered in profound ways, stand as a reminder of the war's devastation. The Great War stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict, a somber reflection on the price of war. It serves as a cautionary tale for future generations, urging us to seek peace and avoid the mistakes of the past. It is our duty to remember, to honor the sacrifices made, and to ensure that the lessons learned are never forgotten. To learn from the past, to educate future generations about the horrors of war, and to foster a culture of peace and understanding. And to strive for a future where such horrors are never repeated, where peace prevails and humanity thrives in harmony. The year was 1939. A dark cloud hung over the world. World War II, a conflict of unimaginable scale, was about to begin. From the bustling cities of Europe to the tranquil islands of the Pacific, no corner of the globe would be spared. Millions would perish. Nations would crumble. The very future of humanity hung precariously in the balance. This was a war unlike any other, a fight for survival against the forces of tyranny and oppression. The seeds of this devastating conflict were sown in the aftermath of the First World War. The Treaty of Versailles, meant to ensure peace, instead bred resentment and instability. Germany, burdened by crippling reparations and territorial losses, became a breeding ground for extremist ideologies. The world, weary from years of bloodshed, remained oblivious to the danger brewing in the heart of Europe. The world watched in horror as events unfolded. From the ashes of a broken world, a new conflict emerged, more brutal and devastating than its predecessor. The cost of war would be immeasurable, paid for in the blood of millions and the shattered dreams of a generation. But amidst the darkness, glimmers of hope would emerge, stories of courage, resilience, and the indomitable spirit of humanity. In the aftermath of World War I, Germany was in ruins. The economy was shattered. The people were desperate. It was from this chaos that Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party rose to prominence. A charismatic orator, Hitler tapped into the deep-seated anger and resentment of the German people. He promised to restore Germany to its former glory, to avenge the humiliation of Versailles. Hitler's message resonated with a nation hungry for hope. He skillfully exploited nationalist sentiment, blaming Germany's woes on Jews, communists, and other perceived enemies. His words, laced with venom and hate, found fertile ground in a society grappling with economic hardship and political instability. Step by step, Hitler tightened his grip on power, dismantling democratic institutions and establishing a totalitarian regime. The world largely ignored Hitler's rise, dismissing him as a fringe figure, a temporary anomaly. They failed to recognize the true danger he posed, the depths of his ambition, and the seductive power of his hateful ideology. By the time the world realized its mistake, it was already too late. The Nazi war machine was in motion, poised to unleash its fury upon the world. The world watched in disbelief as on September 1, 1939, Hitler unleashed the full might of the German war machine upon Poland. The invasion of Poland marked the beginning of World War II. Polish forces, outmatched and outgunned, fought bravely but were ultimately no match for the German blitzkrieg. Tanks and troops stormed across the border, smashing through Polish defenses. The Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, rained terror from above, bombing cities and strafing fleeing civilians. Within weeks, Poland was overrun, its government scattered, its people left to endure the brutality of Nazi occupation. The invasion of Poland shattered the fragile peace that had prevailed since the end of World War I. Great Britain and France, bound by treaty to defend Poland, declared war on Germany on September 3, 1939. The die was cast. The world was once again at war. With the fall of France in June 1940, Great Britain stood alone against the Nazi war machine. Prime Minister Winston Churchill rallied his nation with defiant speeches, vowing to fight on, whatever the cost. "We shall fight on the beaches," he declared. "We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." The Battle of Britain, an epic clash of air power, raged in the skies above England. The Luftwaffe, seeking to cripple the Royal Air Force and pave the way for a German invasion, launched relentless attacks on British airfields, factories, and cities. The Royal Air Force, though outnumbered, fought with extraordinary courage and skill, inflicting heavy losses on the Luftwaffe. Day after day, week after week, the Battle of Britain raged on. The fate of Britain, and indeed the free world, hung in the balance. But the spirit of the British people remained unbroken. Ordinary citizens endured the Blitz, the nightly bombing raids on London and other cities with stoicism and resilience. The Battle of Britain was a turning point in the war. Germany's failure to defeat Britain was a major setback for Hitler's plans for European domination. A cold front, a brutal foe. On June 22, 1941, Hitler betrayed his pact with Stalin and unleashed Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. The German army, confident of a swift victory, surged across the Soviet border, catching Stalin and the Red Army off guard. The initial German advance was swift and brutal. Soviet forces, ill-prepared for the onslaught, were pushed back on all fronts. But the Germans had underestimated the vastness of the Soviet Union and the tenacity of the Red Army. As the bitter Russian winter set in, the German advance bogged down in the face of fierce resistance and logistical nightmares. The Battle of Stalingrad, a grueling, months-long siege, marked a turning point in the war in the East. The Soviet Union, fueled by patriotic fervor and aided by Lend-Lease supplies from the United States, began to turn the tide against the invaders. The Eastern Front would prove to be a meat grinder for both sides, claiming millions of lives. But the Soviet Union's unwavering determination ultimately proved decisive in the fight against Nazi Germany. Day of Infamy, a sleeping giant awakens. On December 7, 1941, the course of World War II changed forever. Japanese aircraft, in a surprise attack on the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, plunged the United States into the global conflict. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a pivotal moment in the war, the date which will live in infamy, as President Franklin D. Roosevelt famously declared, galvanized the American people and unified them behind the war effort. The images of burning battleships and shattered aircraft shocked the nation, igniting a firestorm of outrage and a thirst for revenge. The United States, with its vast industrial capacity and military might, was now fully engaged in the fight against the Axis powers. The American entry into the war had a profound impact on the global balance of power. The United States, along with its allies, would go on to play a decisive role in the defeat of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. Hope from the Beaches, June 6, 1944, D-Day. The largest amphibious invasion in history. Allied forces under the command of General Dwight D. Eisenhower stormed the beaches of Normandy, France, launching the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi occupation. Operation Overlord, as the invasion was codenamed, was a monumental undertaking, involving years of planning and the mobilization of millions of troops, ships, and aircraft. The battle for Normandy was fierce and bloody. Allied troops faced determined resistance from German defenders dug in along the heavily fortified Atlantic Wall, but the courage and determination of the Allied soldiers, coupled with the overwhelming air and naval superiority, ultimately prevailed. The D-Day landings marked a turning point in the war in Europe. The liberation of France and the subsequent Allied advance into Germany spelled the beginning of the end for the Nazi regime. The rising sun sets in atomic fire. In the Pacific, the war raged on. After years of brutal island-hopping campaigns, Allied forces were closing in on the Japanese mainland. Facing imminent defeat, Japan's militarist government refused to surrender, vowing to fight to the bitter end. In a desperate gamble to force a swift end to the war, the United States made the fateful decision to use atomic bombs against Japan. On August 6, 1945, an American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, instantly killing tens of thousands of people and reducing the city to rubble. 3 days later, a second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, resulting in similar devastation. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain the only use of nuclear weapons in warfare. The decision to use these devastating weapons remains a subject of intense debate to this day. On August 15, 1945, Japan announced its surrender, bringing World War II to an end. World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history, left an indelible mark on the world. Tens of millions lay dead, victims of the insatiable hunger for power and the horrors of war. Cities lay in ruins, economies shattered, and families torn apart. In the aftermath of the war, the world grappled with the enormity of the conflict and the lessons learned. The Nuremberg trials held accountable those responsible for the atrocities of the Holocaust, establishing a precedent for international criminal justice. The United Nations was formed in 1945 with the goal of preventing future wars and promoting international cooperation. World War II was a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the human capacity for both good and evil. It is a story that must be told and retold, lest we forget the sacrifices made and the lessons learned. For in remembering the past, we hope to create a better future, one free from the scourge of war and tyranny.